Hi, everyone. My name is Maria White, and I am a senior SEO at Absolute Digital, and it's my again my absolute pleasure to have in our panel some of the most knowledgeable people in Core Web Vitals. So today, welcome to our chat, our second Twitter Spaces chat on this time on Core Web Vitals. So let's crack on then with our events. On the 28th of May in 2020, Google announced on the blog the evaluation of the page experience to better the web. This page experience signal measures elements of how users perceive the experience of interacting with a web page. Then, on the 27th of May 2020, Google Search Central announced in a tweet an update to Search Console. It was then when the speed report became the Core Web Vitals report. Each of the Core Web Vitals reports, which are first input delay, largest contentful panes, and cumulative layout shift, reflects the real-world experience of a critical user-centric outcome. So, ahead of its rollout in June, our chat today is all about Core Web Vitals and some of the most asked questions around them. So let's start with our panel. We start with Dave Smart. He's technical SEO at Tame the Bots and Google Search Central Platinum Product Expert. Hi, Dave.
Hi.
Hi. Then we have Ulrika Viberg. She's technical SEO and founder of the SEOGirls in Sweden. Hi, Ulrika.
Hello.
Hi. We also have Giacomo Zechinna. He is technical SEO director at Viberg. Hi, Giacomo.
Hi.
And from Absolute Digital Media, we have our lovely racing star, Sophie Brannon. Hi, Sophie.
Hi.
Hi. And finally, we are absolutely delighted to have Martin Splitt, developer advocate at Google. Hi, Martin.
Grüezi wohl.
Hi, everyone. So let's crack on. We have had a lot of questions that were sent via DM, via email. Some of these questions were sent were in our Twitter accounts. So these questions go between the tools to measure the Core Web Vitals, best practices, and some other elements. So one of the most asked question we had is in regards to tools to measure the Core Web Vitals. Some people uses Lighthouse, other people uses Page Speed Insights, and some people go to Chrome user experience. They see the Web Vitals in Chrome user experience. So again, this question is from someone who says, why do I see different values for the Web Vitals in Chrome user experience and Page Speed Insights or in the Lighthouse report? Who would like to start?
Anyone wants to take this one?
I can start and then you can jump on and explain it further.
Yeah, go ahead.
So as I have understood it, the difference is that Lighthouse is actually using lab data, and the Chrome, the Crux report uses field data, and the difference between those is that lab data measures how the browser renders the page or is loading the page in regards of what device you're using and location and bandwidth, etc. And if you have a lot of extensions, etc., that interferes with the loading, that's going to give you a different kind of metric than the field data that is actually measuring your user's experience, and they're combining the user experience over a month. And of course, that's going to give a more steady metric, so to say. Okay. And if anyone has anything further to add to that, please jump in.
Yeah, sure. That was pretty good. I think that covers a lot of it. Particularly Lighthouse, when you run it from your developer tools or something, it's like, say, it's running on your machine and your connection. And although it tends to simulate what a user on a mobile, for example, might get, it's only of an approximation because it's kind of stable. It has to pretend to be something. And it's almost kind of designed to be fairly repeatable. It's always the same kind of connection to an extent and things like that. For PageSpeed Insights, which also runs Lighthouse, but it runs Lighthouse on Google servers for you, you know, that's a little bit more consistent in some way that way. But once again, it's still only simulating. The other thing as well is it's only the initial load of a page. So when you first load a page, it doesn't scroll up, it doesn't, you know, down and interact with the page. So it misses a large part of the entire life cycle of the page that is part of Core Web Vitals.
Okay.
Yep, that's and also on top of it, remember that the goal of all of this is to quantify the experience that people are having with your website. And for that, most of these metrics are somewhat heuristics. For instance, the largest contentful paint, that's not necessarily always going to be the same thing, depending a little bit on how the site loads, how different things pop into your website, and that depends on the network, and there might be latencies, there might be retries happening on the network level. So a lot of these things, a lot of these signals have inherent jitter, so like a slight variation in itself. So even if you would run Lighthouse from your computer 5 times, you'll likely get 5 different values. Not necessarily like all over the place, more likely within the same ballpark, kinda. So if you see like a score of 80, next time it might be 76, next time it might be 85, next time it might even be 90, but it will be roughly within a reasonable region. It shouldn't be like all over the place. But yeah, the big difference really is different tools, use different methods to obtain this data, and the biggest differentiation between that is lab data versus field data.
Okay, Martin, I have a question. This is a personal one from a personal experience. Since I want to learn more about all of these metrics and these things, I created, I have 2 websites I use as tests for any practices of anything I want to do. One of the websites is, I use that website just to spam it to death to see what happened. And that is what I use for my bad practices. I think I know the answer, but is it normal, for example, if we have to see the scores in a website, in a given website, where they fluctuate erratically from one day to another? Let's say one day they are on 65, around on average of 65 on Lighthouse, and next day they are on 10. Or then back to 40, and then never surpasses 65, but they fluctuate like erratically, not like 5 points up or 5 points down. It's like erratically by 30 to 40 points each time.
You're not the first one I hear this from. So this can obviously be influenced by lots of different things. So for instance, if there is a program on your computer on one time running some sort of update and basically taking up lots of your internet bandwidth, then you might actually see a slowdown. Or if there's something that takes a lot of CPU in the background, that might take a slowdown. But normally they shouldn't fluctuate this much.
Oh.
But as I said, the data, the measurements are, how do I put this nicely? The problem there really is that the browser's main purpose is not to measure these things. The browser's main purpose is to load stuff. And then basically at certain points in time, it gives off these metrics, or it gives signals to the metrics collection that is Lighthouse, that basically allow you to measure these things. And they can definitely differ based on lots of different things, depending on if the cache was warmed before. I think Lighthouse disables the cache, though. It can depend on so many different things. I mean, if you load a website, any website, sometimes it loads very fast, sometimes it loads a little slower, depending on network congestion and so on and so forth. But they shouldn't fluctuate as much. If you can recreate this, or if you can reproduce these issues, I would definitely try to open a bug with Lighthouse. Lighthouse is an open source project. So you can open an issue with that and say like, hey, Why am I seeing these fluctuations? Because I'm pretty sure the team is interested in that. And that goes to say Lighthouse is far from perfect. It's very good at what it does, but it's far from perfect.
Okay. Yeah, this is interesting because it's just that website in particular, the one I've messed up around and I test, and I use for my test, that is kind of fluctuating erratically, because I haven't seen this case with, for example, with any of my clients or other websites. It's just in particular that one. Probably I'm doing something very, very wrong there on my tests. Anyhow.
I wouldn't say you're doing it wrong. I'm just saying like you're doing something that maybe the Lighthouse team didn't anticipate, or that is very unusual. And I'm sure they would be interested.
Cool. Thank you. So that leads me to another similar question. Why are the scores between field data and lab data so different if the lab data environment stimulates the real scenario?
Does someone else want to take this first, or should I dive in?
Giacomo?
Yes, no problem. So, talking about field data and lab data, the difference between these two kind of data is the amount of scenario that you can have. Real data, so field data, can have tons of scenarios. So you can have people with a 3G connection that is entering in the tube, or people I don't know, everywhere in the world with a very good connection, with a cable connection, or with a poor website, or with a poor device like a cheap smartphone or anything else, or a MacBook, for example. So you can't really recreate all these kind of scenario in lab data. You can have some things that is like, okay, we are grouping this kind of scenario in this group. So this is a 3G connection from London that is connecting to this website, and something like this. But we can't really replicate everything that we have in the field data.
Cool. Anyone else? Okay.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
well, once again, I think we covered it as well. But
Okay.
with the field data, obviously, it's looking a little bit more as well than lab data. Although, I think most of the differences are, as Giacomo says, it's simulating the thing, but that's kind of an average that it's aiming at, a median use. Whereas field data is all kinds of different people on all kinds of different devices, and they're interacting, they're scrolling up and down pages, they're doing weird things, they've got a million tabs open, which is something that lab data can never really get and simulate for everyone. So there's always going to be some discrepancy there.
And in general, you get very different data from field data as well, because yes, as has been said, multitude of users and multitude of situations. Also, the aggregations might look different, and it's a sliding window basically over time. So you might have a month with particularly, how do I put this, with particularly unfortunate users and unfortunate conditions, like mobile internet in Germany, which probably wouldn't be so great for them. And then next month you might see more users from other countries in other circumstances on more modern devices. So like this data itself is noisy.
Okay. Cool. So I have now a very interesting question. We had this one quite a lot coming through our DMs. I think it was many times we had this question in different ways. So obviously, ahead of the rollout of Core Web Vitals, a lot of us are kind of like panicking in a way. So there is a lot of quick fixes already out there, practices, techniques, and plugins. So my question is, the next question is, ahead of the Core Web Vitals, that there has been a surge of plugins for improving Core Web Vitals scores. These plugins are increasingly becoming popular as they represent kind of like a quick fix. So basically you install the plugin and you might pay a fee for it, and suddenly, voila, you see your scores going from 30, let's say, to 90 within a matter of a few days or pretty much immediately. Are these kind of plugins within practices, or is it, what is it doing to my website? Again, it is it's one of the most asked questions, but also I kind of tried it to one of my test website, and yeah, it is impressive to see the scores going up quite frantically. But is this a good thing? Is this recommendable?
I think that's a really interesting point, and it's something that I'm seeing more and more as well. Like certain plugins are marketing themselves as not necessarily a solution to Core Web Vitals, but it's going to get your speed up there, and we're going to use all of this caching and CDN functionalities, and marketers are jumping all over these, which is great. And like you say, Maria, we've conducted some tests internally, and we have seen some improvements in not just the page speed score, but also in the Core Web Vitals metrics. But is it just kind of like a band-aid situation where it's solving some of the issues kind of for the short term, but long term, perhaps a more manual approach is needed?
The thing
yeah, you go ahead, Martin, if you want to.
No. Yours. Stage is yours, Ulrika.
All right, I was first. No, I was just going to say that a lot of web owners don't have a full stack of developers that they can ask for help, or who can help them with sorting different stuff on their web page that actually lowers their scores. So in that case, yes, I think that it might help. I don't think it's a silver bullet. None of these plugins are ever silver bullets. You have to do something manually to put in there, like, I don't know, ask it to do stuff, or compress your images, and on the way you're going to learn how to deal with your content so that it is faster, etc. And also you need like a good web hosting service, and I don't think that the plugin will actually do that. But as a web owner that doesn't have a ton of developers to help you out, I think it's a good way to start. Is better than doing nothing. What do you say, Martin?
So, coming from a developer's perspective, I know that very few of the admittedly very different projects that I worked on in the past had the same path to success in terms of performance improvements. So, the thing that I'm a little worried about, on one hand, I'm really excited about these plugins, because I think making it as easy as possible for website owners who are oftentimes, and that's by far the majority, are not technical, is great. If there's someone out there who's just like, I want to share my photography work with the world, I want to share my art with the world, I want to sell my goods or services online, and these people can get away with all the craft and problematic legacy stuff that is in lots of the platforms they might be using, be that CMS, be that a platform as a service kind of thing, or like a hosted solution done by a third party. For them, that is amazing. That is great. The thing that there's two things that I'm worried about here, though. Number one, you are giving the house keys to a third-party piece of software, which you effectively are always when you are installing some sort of plugin, because it's similar to like JavaScript libraries, when people are like, oh yeah, we'll just include Google Tag Manager and then load these 5,000 libraries and things and services. All these services now have full access to what's happening on your page, not on the server side necessarily, but at least on the client side, where they are having some sort of access, or actually full access, to what is being displayed on or rendered on the page. If they're doing something problematic or that used to be a best practice and no longer is a best practice, you have just added a layer of legacy instead of actually solving the original problem with just cleaning up the platform or the software that you're using in the first place. So there is this additional complexity that you need to be aware that might work for now, it might not work forever, and it might not work well. The other thing is, as they are applying some sort of silver bullet kind of tactics, they might in the end do something that isn't actually helping the bot. So like if we think about what are we trying to do with the core web vitals and with page experience, we're not trying to generate some sort of score. What we're trying to measure and quantify what actual users are experiencing when visiting your page. That is hard. That is very, very hard. And I have used many opportunities to say how approximative and how indirect this measurement is, because it's really hard to actually, like, we can't plug into people's brains and get the feeling for how the brain chemicals change while they're loading your website. That's not a thing. So what I'm worried about is that these plugins somehow game the system. They're somehow like doing, like, I don't know, it's like, ooh, if we are doing this, it still is slow and terrible for the user, but the scores are coming out fine. And that is going against the whole idea. That's undercutting the entire initiative to motivate everyone who has a website to try to make that website faster and to switch to platforms and CMSs and systems and setups where it is fast for the user. So my real big worry is, and we have seen the other side, we have seen the flip side of that, where websites that were doing good things for users in the past struggle to get good scores, so to say, in these measurements, not necessarily in the core web vitals, but in the predecessor metrics. It's like, oh, my website does this. Look, it's so much faster for me as a user, but in the scores, it looks so much worse. So we have worked, and we are continuing to work really hard on figuring out how to measure what is actually good for the user and reflect that in good scores. My worry really is that the plugins or some plugins will pop up that are undercutting that effort by gaming the system effectively.
Very, very interesting. And yeah, it kind of is giving me an idea that as every quick fix in SEO throughout the years, if it's overly done, it might soon become not a best practice. Just saying this by experience. Okay, so I have another question. This one is from Joe Johnson, one of our senior SEO managers at Absolute Digital. Joe, would you like me to ask the question, or do you have the question somewhere?
Hi, Maria. Thank you. No, that's cool. I can jump in.
Yeah, go on.
Yeah, hi, everyone. Yeah, thanks. Hi, everyone. Joe here from Absolute Digital Media. Question for Martin. This kind of links back to what you were talking about just now in terms of the PSI score and the actual core web vitals themselves. My question is, which is more important, the PSI score itself or passing the core web vitals? Now, I do understand that the two are very much linked together. So passing the core web vitals, if you pass the core web vitals, you're much likely to have a higher PSI score. But I was messing around with the calculator on PSI, and I managed to create a situation whereby I had a score of 95, but passing all the vitals. And then I created another situation where I had a score of 99, but failing one of the core web vitals, which was actually CLS, because that only contributes 5% to the overall score. So, yeah, I guess my question is, in those, I know it's a theoretical situation, but which one of those two would be considered as better? The one with a score of 95 that passes all the core web vitals, or the one with a score of 99 that fails one of them? I think you're probably going to say the former, but yeah, it'd be good to hear your take on that.
So just to be very extremely clear on this, neither Lighthouse nor PSI, which in turn is using Lighthouse, is actually relevant for the page experience signal. That what they are doing is they give you a way to quote unquote locally and quote unquote reproducibly testing your pages, but it's more important to pass the core web vitals, and specifically we are using the field data for the page experience signal. So you want to monitor the field data that shows up.
Sure. Okay, that makes sense. And so I guess like my question that leads on from that is would the would the score itself be used as a kind of a tiebreaker in a situation where you had, let's say, two sites that were very, very similar and they both passed all the core web vitals, or you had two sites that both failed one of the core web vitals? Would that PSI score be a kind of a tiebreaker there, or is it still just about the core web vitals?
Again, Google search does not use PSI, does not use Lighthouse at all. These are testing tools for you to test things and to try things out and to measure things, like in staging and development, maybe in production as well. They're not used by Google search.
Okay.
Cool. Fantastic. That was my question. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. There is another question here. I think, well, we can leave that one at the end because it's more for Martin. This one is for Giacomo, because I've heard he's a big fan of, or I think I've heard you talking about AMP pages. This question is, if I build an AMP page, do they meet the recommended thresholds? I can't pronounce that word, sorry. But you know what I mean.
Threshold.
Yeah, that's the one. Threshold. Thank you. Giacomo?
Yeah. I'm not really a very big fan on HAMP, but yeah, it's okay. So talking about HAMP, HAMP is a technology that helps you to produce some sort of page that are not that big in terms of size, or that are, that are fast, but they also use some sort of web components, because HAMP in some sort of way are using web components, for example, for the list, or for the list of articles, for example, you can use a web component, or also other feature. So using web component, adding more JavaScript, adding more script and more functionality, you are gonna get a slower page. So HAMP, if we look from this point of view, is like any other pages. You can do fast page or slow page, but you can also, using only HTML, JavaScript, and CSS, you can build a better website, a faster website that using HAMP. So sometimes using HAMP, you can already meet the threshold, sometimes not. So it's not really something that, okay, I'm going to use HAMP and I'm going to be faster. Yeah, sometimes, yeah, it depends.
Brilliant. Thank you, Giacomo. Anyone else? No?
Yeah, I think it's fair enough to say that AMP holds your hand a lot to help you make the right decisions to build a fast page, but as Giacomo says, it's not one of those silver magic bullets. It's entirely possible to make a bad AMP score as it is to make a bad web page, really.
Thank you. So now this question is more for, 1 second. I just lost the question, I had it here. Yeah, this is more for Martin, I believe. In your last search of the record, you mentioned fake speed. What does that mean?
What, I mentioned what, fake speed?
Yes.
Oh, I think I know what they mean. So like, let me re-emphasize that in our last search of the record, we didn't try to actually speak about the actual thing that is happening in Google search or with page speed or whatever. We kind of try to approach it from a, what if, this is literally what we literally meant was like, if we were to make a new search engine today, how would we do it? And what factors would we look into? And if we were to look at speed and performance, how would we do that? And I reflected a question into that conversation that I got multiple times on Twitter. And the question was, what if someone tries to hurt me by somehow inject or like making sure that there was a lot of field data reported back that looks bad or makes my page look bad. And I think that's what they mean when they say fake speed. It's like, what if someone tries to manipulate the field data? Is that a concern? Is that a legitimate concern? To which I think the answer is no.
Okay. Okay, so that's
But maybe someone else wants to take that on as well.
Not me, trust me. Okay. Another question. Now, again, page experience. Cookie pop-up banners. Do they count as intrusive interstitial?
I mean, I guess that depends on how intrusive it really is. I guess if it's a pop-up that blocks like all of the content on the page, or it's not responsive, and then yeah, maybe it will count as intrusive. But if it's something that you can genuinely interact with and it's not covering all of the content and users can get around it and they can cross it off and things like that, then just kind of looking at Google's guidelines, then no, it shouldn't be intrusive at all. But I don't know what everyone else's take on that is.
Yeah, it's one of those things that when they announced the blog post a good while ago, because interstitials has been there for a bit, they did specifically say anything that was a legal requirement, like a cookie pop-up, a GDPR thing is for most of us in Europe and stuff, and things like age verification isn't something that they're going to penalise you for. They understand that has to be there. So I do think, as Sophie said, though, you still, maybe not from the score thing, it's still better making sure that it doesn't cover all your pages, because people want to know what you're offering and what you're doing before they give you that permission and click. And I think probably people just click anyway, unfortunately, these days. But yeah, I don't think it'll necessarily be, I don't think it'd be a negative as long as it was clearly a GDPR banner or a cookie pop-up banner.
If I can add some things on this, please don't use only images when you have a pop-up that is like asking for cookie usage permission or an age verification or something similar. Because obviously, I'm not a Google employee, but from what I understand, Google needs to understand what is inside the banner. So if you're using an images, they can't get really, okay, this is a pop-up, but it's about cookie. So it's okay for us because it's something that you have to use it, or it's an age verification, or anything else that is out of it. So please don't use images, but write down that you are asking for permission, blah, 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 blah.
Martin and Ulrika?
+1 to all that has been said from me here.
Amazing. So I have another.
Me too.
Oh yeah, brilliant. I have another question on that as well. Are automatic chat pop-ups a bad practice? I particularly hate them, but
yeah, I hate them too.
yeah. Oh man, yeah. So yeah, I want to hear.
I'm just going to give it a blanket. Yes, kill them with fire.
Sorry.
Just terrible, kill them with fire, because I hate them. No, I think it's the same if they're popping up and covering everything. Then it is an intrusive interspell. A lot of the chat plugins as well are also terribly heavy and load an awful lot of JavaScript, so can hit things in Core Web Vitals in other ways as well.
Yeah, there are some chats that are really loading everything together when you have the plugin on your page, but there are chat that has not loading everything, but for example only the images at the bottom, and if you hover with the mouse the images, they start downloading everything else. So in that case I would say no, it's not that a big problem if you have to use it for marketing purpose or anything else. But please be careful about the amount of data this kind of chat is downloading. Sometimes they download 1 or 2 megabytes of data. So yeah, in that case, it's going to be bad.
Thank you. That's very interesting. I have a question that's based on a comment once I heard from Martin. Makes me laugh, and I'm going to repeat it. It's about a polished turd, which basically I can't believe I just said that. So basically, when you have an amazing, beautiful website, perfect speed, perfect, it's absolutely everything is perfect, but the content is useless, not very up to date, not very good on other SEO elements, and there is not many links pointed to this amazing, fantastic website, so nobody's going to see this website anyway. Now, what about the other way around? Do you have a website with lots of content on the homepage, text, the typical person who heard somewhere, oh, you need to have more than 400 words on the homepage and a big image and all of that. So very good links on national media, collaborations with influencers, good content strategy in place, but the website is in itself is an absolute nightmare, and the page, the scores are very, very low. What would be the impact as a whole? And I know maybe I'm going into the territory of rankings, which I didn't want to go, but would there be any impact as a whole? So I'd like to hear your thoughts on this.
If I can start?
Yeah, go on.
Thoughts?
Go.
So actually, I had a thought about this, and now we don't know really how this is gonna impact our rankings, because we are not seeing it yet, and we don't actually know what's going to happen. As web owners or consultants that deal with clients' websites, etc. But I think that as I see it, your site or my client's site will again be in its cluster be compared with the other content pages or sites in that cluster. And if they are bad as well, or if they have lower scores on other things, that they are maybe this polished turd, but you are a fantastic turtle instead. Maybe your overall scores are better anyways, and that's how I want to see it, at least. I hope it is this way, but of course, I think that we all should try to optimize for a better user experience, and that includes the loading, etc. So not only the content is not enough, but also the experience.
Amazing. Thank you. Anyone else? Sophie?
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, I think what a lot of people are going to start doing and have done over the last few months is go into panic stations and go, right, we need to get our core web vitals up because that's going to be the next update, and that's all they're going to be focusing on. But that's all well and good, but we need to remember that core web vitals and page experience is part of a bigger picture, is part of the bigger 200 plus kind of ranking factors or parts of the algorithm that Google's going to be judging websites on. So it does need to be a balance of having great user experience, having great page experience and core web vitals, having great content, having great links, and having great tech SEO generally. It needs to be a balance across the board.
Yeah, and I think really I think it's about stepping back, because it's about page experience. And in the end of the day, the ultimate page experience is the content that's on it. It's not a very good experience at all if you go and read a bunch of rubbish. It might not be, if it's the best how to polish a turd guide ever, if it's a little bit slow, it probably doesn't matter as much as if, it's an empty page that's blazingly fast. So, so I think content and relevance will always play a bigger part of it. But where the magic comes is where you can do both together,
Amazing. Thank you. Okay, so now I think we are getting close to the end. So what would be your piece of advice to look at ahead of the Core Web Vitals deadline, which is we are 2 weeks away from June. Again, we don't know when this is going to roll out, 1st of June, 2nd of June, or 30th of June. We know somewhere around June. So what would be your piece of advice to look at then ahead the Core Web Vitals deadline?
Should I start again?
Yeah.
So my advice would be prepare, and if you haven't started testing yet, start now and start optimizing. But also build in a process for how to keep the scores great and build it into your web development and strategies and the process and ways of working in your company.
Thank you. Martin, Giacomo?
Yeah, I would say, this is so hard to answer because it's like
I know,
we are
sorry.
in a bit. We as Google are in, or Google
Yeah.
search relations are in a bit of a pickle as well, because on one hand we want everyone to be aware that web performance is important, so we need to like get people excited about it and get them working on it and bring enough urgency for people to understand that that's something they really need to look into. On the other hand, for many people, it won't be that much of a big deal and won't be that much of a difference once it rolls out. So there's this risk of saying like, hey, this is important, this needs to happen. And then people are like, oh my God, battle stations, everyone, ships going down. And then the day happens and they're like, oh, well, that was it. So it is tricky to balance this and like not be wrong or not set wrong expectations for people. But there will be some people who will find, oh, we should probably have worried about this sooner. And then there will be other people who are like, oh, we worried far too much about this. So just try to do your work in terms of figuring out what users you want to reach, how to reach them, and how to make them happy. And if you do that, no matter how you're doing that, you'll be on a good path.
Amazing. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, so if I have to suggest only one thing, I would suggest something that is often overlooked. So Core Web Vitals in the page experience update will be based on the Chrome user experience report. So from Chrome metrics that Chrome register when you visit a website. But not only the first visit, but also the repeated visit. This is something that is often overlooked. So if you can, just look at cache and service. And if you can also, this is a bit more complicated, a service worker. If you can do that, I think that you can, if you have a website that is receiving a lot of repeated visit from same user, yeah, you are gonna improve your Core Web Vitals with just a few changes in your server.
Amazing, thank you, Giacomo. Dave?
Yeah, I think it's firstly, don't panic. Secondly, I say maybe get some way of measuring things. It is coming from crooks, a lot of smaller sites, and probably the people who might be worrying the most because they're a small independent person won't quite reach the thresholds to get that data. So maybe have a search around. There's a few places that allow you to collect real user metrics yourself. So that could start filling in some of the gaps. And then just have a look, keep up to date, look at web.dev. Always has a lot of great content on it, a lot of good advice. And just get comfortable with the idea of the different metrics. And don't get too attached to them because they might change as time goes on, the things are evolving. But yeah, just relax into that and try and get some data and try and build it, as Ulrika very much said, try and build it into your whole process of creating and managing your site for ongoing.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, everyone. This has been interesting, and the insights, the answers we had to all of the questions we received around 70 questions that were kind of compressed in the questions we just asked today. So thank you very much. Thank you everyone for joining us. We're gonna have our Twitter Spaces are gonna be taking place every 2 weeks on Thursdays. Ideally, we aim to run them at 6 p.m. Just on one occasion, we're going to run them on the 10th of June at 7 p.m. The next Tourist Spaces chat is going to be in 2 weeks' time, and we're planning to do something around digital PR. So all of your questions you have around links and coverage and all of that, then join us, because it's going to be digital PR. And I think our head of PR, which is here, Amy Sparrow, is probably thinking, wait, what? Yeah, yes. So that is in 2 weeks. And in a month's time, join us on the 10th of June for another, not SEO related, it's going to be marketing related chat. The next one is going to be on the 10th of June. It's going to be on marketing for startups and how to run your own website and how to do your marketing for your own startup. And that one is going to be with Rand Fishkin on the 10th of June. So thank you very much, everyone. Thank you, Martin and the Twitch family, as I call them. Thank you for joining us today, the Twitch family, because Martin runs every, as well, Thursdays. Well, not every Thursdays, but some Thursdays and Tuesdays.
I'm trying.
His lovely, amazing Twitches where he codes live. I have learned over the past year, I have learned huge amount on rendering, open source, robots.txt, and all of that. Yes, Martin, I'm very, very quiet on the Twitches, but trust me, I'm taking notes, and that's why I'm running all of these random tests on my website. But yeah, so thank you very much, everyone. If you have more questions, please keep sending them. We're going to try in our team to get back to you. And next is, in the next few days, probably next week, we're going to write a post with all of the findings and everything, like summary of the today's Twitch. So thank you, everyone, and thank you to our panel. It's been lovely. So thank you. See you on the next one.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Bye-bye.
guys.
Bye.
Bye bye.
Cheers. Bye.
Stay safe, stay healthy.
Bye. You too. Bye bye.